I'm Rachel Dunham. I'm 31, a civil engineer, and I've done everything by the book. I got my degree, held a steady job, paid my taxes, and for 7 years I chipped away at the mortgage on a modest 3-bedroom ranch house just outside Asheville, North Carolina. 6 months ago, I made the final payment. That house, those 1,500 square feet of beige siding and bad tile choices, was mine. Every inch. Paid in full. I was proud. I didn't throw a party or post a selfie in front of the sold sign. I just sat on my empty living room floor with a pizza box and the deed in my lap, thinking, this is what security feels like. That feeling lasted exactly 187 days. Because on my sister Ellie's wedding day during the reception toast, my mother Judy got up and handed the microphone to Brent, Ellie's new husband, and said with this proud little smirk, "Brent, consider Rachel's house our wedding gift to you. You've earned it." Laughter. Applause. Champagne glasses clinked. I didn't laugh. I blinked at her like she was speaking in Morse code. Then I looked around the table. No one else seemed confused. She said it like it was just another generous family gesture, like I'd agreed to it, like I'd offered it up. But I hadn't. That house wasn't a gift. It was my life. My work. My name was still on the deed. I stood up so fast my champagne flute went flying. It shattered against the floor of the hotel ballroom, glass in my shoes, champagne in my dress. The room went quiet. I looked around for anyone who might say something, step in, tell me this was a joke. But they just stared. No one followed me out. I walked barefoot through the parking lot in my bridesmaid dress, mascara smeared, and my hair falling out of its bobby pins. I called a rideshare and climbed in without a word. My phone buzzed with notifications. Photos of the cake cutting. Ellie tagged me in a group pic with a caption that read, #FamilyFirst, 2 hearts, #Carter Wedding Bliss, family first? I laughed so hard I startled the driver. Back in the motel, I sat on the bed with the deed pulled up on my phone. Still had my name on it. Rachel Dunham, owner. Except now, I didn't even have keys. They'd changed the locks. The next morning, still in that wrinkled, burnt orange dress, I sat in a Motel 6 eating stale Doritos from the vending machine and watching Property Brothers on mute. It felt cruel, or maybe poetic. They renovate houses, I just lost mine. That's when the text came in. From my mother. "Don't be dramatic, you'll always have the lake cabin." The lake cabin. She meant my lake cabin. The little fixer-upper I'd bought 2 years ago, about 40 minutes north, on a quiet bend of Lake Lure. It wasn't big, just a 2-bedroom with a sagging deck, but it had a view of the water and a screened-in porch where I used to sip coffee on long weekends. I let them use it for family weekends. I even paid for the cleaning between visits. And now, she was acting like it was theirs. I didn't reply. I drove out to the house I no longer had access to. My name still on the deed. My photos still in the cloud. My life. But someone else's wedding gift. I sat in my car outside the house that evening, headlights off. A wreath hung on the door that hadn't been there before. It read, "Welcome home." I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My parents had taken the house I built from the ground up, mentally, emotionally, financially, and handed it to a man who'd never held a job for longer than 6 months. A man who once asked me if engineers just draw blueprints all day. Brent, Ellie's new husband, the gym guy who ran pyramid schemes on the side and wore cologne so strong it could kill a houseplant. They gave him my house. And worse, they expected me to be fine with it. That was the night something in me cracked. Not broke, not shattered, cracked. The way ice does just before it turns to something sharper. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to cry anymore. I was going to take everything they overlooked, everything they assumed I'd hand over quietly, and make sure they never forgot what it cost them. Not just the house. Me. I woke up in a Motel 6 with Dorito crumbs on the pillow, and that stiff motel sheet itch on my skin. The dress I wore to the wedding was bunched on the floor, orange satin wilted like a peeled flower, still smelled like stale champagne and betrayal. I washed my face in the sink, stared at myself under the flickering fluorescent light. Puffy eyes. Mascara ghosts. No keys, no home, and apparently no one who thought that might be a problem. My phone buzzed. One new message. From Mom. "Don't be dramatic. You'll always have the lake cabin red heart." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a cruel joke. This was their new reality. I was a resource, not a daughter. The house I'd bought with no help? Reassigned. My vacation cabin? Now a consolation prize. And the heart emoji? Salt in the wound. I didn't reply. Just tossed my phone onto the bed and grabbed the hoodie I kept in my trunk for site visits. It still had a grease stain from last year's inspection at the Henderson job site. Smelled like smoke and resolve. By noon, I was sitting in the motel lobby with a free cup of bitter coffee, scrolling Airbnb listings just to punish myself. I couldn't afford a new place. Not really. All my money had gone into the house. Into that roof. That plumbing. Those property taxes that nearly broke me. And they gave it away like it was a bottle of rosé. My finger hovered over the photo of my cabin. I pulled up the deed just to make sure. Still mine. I'd bought it in a foreclosure auction 2 years ago for a steal. Spent weekends patching the roof, sanding the porch, installing smart locks and a new HVAC system. Paid cash. No one helped. No one even visited until the updates were done. Then, magically, it became the, quote, family retreat. I used to drive up there to breathe, to sit by the lake and read books I never finished. I'd let them stay for a week each summer. I'd even stocked the fridge before their visits. But last summer, they started bringing guests. Brent's friends. Ellie's influencer pals. People I didn't know, tagging my cabin on Instagram like it was a boutique rental. They stopped asking. Just showed up. I should have drawn a line then. But I didn't. I was still trying to be the bigger person. The reasonable one. The one who doesn't start drama. Who makes space. Who lets things go. I went to the Target down the street and bought a clean t-shirt and a travel toothbrush. Spent $5 on a clearance nail polish I didn't need, just to feel like I had some kind of choice. Then I drove to the cabin. My hands were shaking on the wheel. The sun was setting when I pulled into the gravel driveway. And there they were. Mom, Dad, sitting on the porch with 2 wine glasses and a plate of crackers like it was just another Saturday. My mouth went dry. She saw me first. "Oh, Rachel," Mom said, like she'd forgotten I existed. "We figured you'd be coming up this weekend." I didn't answer. "You're not mad about the house, are you?" she asked, pouring herself more wine. "It made sense, sweetie. Brent and Ellie are starting their life together. You're already so established." That word. Established. Like I was furniture, like my stability made me expendable. "I didn't give it to you," I said quietly. "Or them." Mom tilted her head. "It was a family decision." Dad nodded, like that settled it. I walked to the mailbox at the end of the drive. My name was still on it. My mail inside. A utility bill. A catalog, and a postcard from Mandy, my cousin, who'd always quietly kept her distance from the drama. Back when I graduated with honors, Mandy threw me a little party. My parents skipped it. Said Ellie's cheer competition was already on the calendar. They sent flowers. From the grocery store. I stared at the front door of the cabin. It had a new wreath on it. Navy and gold. Ellie's wedding colors. "I need to grab some things," I said. "Don't worry, I won't interrupt your little wine tasting." Mom stood up, arms crossed. "Rachel, this isn't like you. You're not usually so territorial. Like I was a dog guarding scraps. Like I wasn't the one who had built everything they were sipping wine in." I walked past them, grabbed my duffel from the trunk, and stepped into my own house like a guest. The guest room? Full of their luggage. My bathroom now had Dad's razor on the sink, my childhood soccer trophies, dumped in a plastic box in the garage. My bedroom, painted beige, with a sign on the door that said Brent's Meditation Studio. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the beige wall and let a new thought settle into my bones. They were never proud of what I built. They just wanted to repurpose it. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about how easily they could pretend I was in the way. A week later, I came back to the cabin just to check the mail. That was all I was supposed to do. I'd been couch surfing at a friend's apartment, trying to act like this was a temporary glitch in my life, like I was just between leases, not between identities. But when I turned onto the gravel road that led to my cabin, I saw it. My mom's blue Subaru, Dad's beat-up sedan behind it, and 2 wine glasses already on the porch table. I hadn't told them I was coming. I hadn't even replied to Mom's last text. "We're thinking of staying up at the lake a bit longer. Hope that's okay." Hope that's okay. Like I was the one who needed to accommodate them. I parked at the edge of the driveway and just sat there. They'd unpacked. The porch was swept. New cushions on the rocking chairs. There were citronella candles. They were living there. Mom waved from the swing. "We were going to tell you," she shouted, cheerful like she'd been waiting to surprise me with cookies instead of squatting in my vacation home. I walked up the steps, calm, controlled. "Why are you here?" I asked. Dad stood, brushing cracker crumbs off his shorts. "Ratch, don't be like this. You weren't using it." That was his defense. I wasn't using it. Like a shirt in someone else's closet. Like a leftover seat at a wedding. If I wasn't physically occupying space, they assumed it was available. "This is my house," I said. Mom blinked. "We thought you'd be happy. You've been so stressed. We figured we'd take care of the place for you." Take care of it. Like they hadn't already painted over my childhood. Like I couldn't see the new beachy wall art from TJ Maxx hanging in the hallway. "We'll only be here until things settle down," she added, sipping her wine. "What things?" I asked. She hesitated. "Ellie and Brent are thinking of starting a family. They might need help. And we're downsizing." There it was. They were moving into my cabin without ever saying it out loud. I stepped inside. The air smelled like lavender dryer sheets. My throw blankets were folded differently. My coffee maker was moved. My pantry reorganized. A little labeled jar even read, "Brent's protein mix." That was the moment it hit me. They don't care what I build. They only care what they can take from it. Flashback hit hard. My college graduation. I made Dean's List 4 years in a row. The ceremony was across the state, but I told them months in advance. Reserved tickets. Sent directions. The night before, Mom called. "Ellie has a cheer competition. We didn't know it was the same weekend." "But I told you back in February," I'd said. "Well, sweetie, it was already on the calendar. You understand, right?" And back then, I said, "Yeah, I understand." Because I always said that. Always folded myself small, so their excuses didn't feel like knives. They'd sent a card. No cash. Just, "We're so proud of you. Can't wait to hear all about it." But they never asked. That moment, the one in my cabin now, wasn't new. It was the latest entry in a long list of quiet erasures. They never screamed. Never cursed. They just edited me out. One skipped ceremony at a time. This was different, though. This was real estate. This was mine. And they were already picking curtains, like they'd inherited it. I walked to the garage and pulled open a dusty box. My old soccer medals clinked at the bottom. Torn yearbooks. School projects I'd saved from middle school. All shoved into plastic with no lids. My name was sharpied across the side. Like I was a tenant who hadn't paid rent. Dad appeared in the doorway. "You're really gonna throw a fit about this?" I stared at him. At the man who once made me a cardboard telescope in 5th grade. For the science fair. Who taught me how to change a tire. Now he stood in my house like a landlord, reminding me of my expiration date. "I'm not throwing a fit," I said. "I'm just watching." Watching what? How fast I'd disappear from my own life. He didn't get it. I wasn't sure he ever had. I grabbed my mail, just a few bills and a birthday coupon from a diner, and walked back to my car. Mom called after me, "Rachel, be reasonable. You have the house in Asheville." I paused at the edge of the driveway and turned slowly. "No," I said. "Brent has the house in Asheville." And I got in my car. Not fast, not dramatic. I just left. Because I already knew what they were too comfortable admitting. They thought I didn't matter unless I was giving them something. That was their mistake. I almost didn't open the text from my cousin Mandy. I was still raw. That kind of heaviness where your chest feels like a locked drawer. Nothing comes out. Everything stays jammed inside. But Mandy never texts unless it matters. So I opened it. A screenshot from Ellie's private Instagram story. Captioned in her bubbly, curated font. "My parents are so brave for taking Rachel's cabin back from her. Honestly, she never even used it. Hashtag entitled much." I read it again. Taking my cabin back. Like it was theirs. Like I was a squatter. Like my 7 years of saving, and DIY weekends, and secondhand furniture meant nothing. The next screenshot hit harder. Brent. TikTok. 10,000 views already. The title? "When your wife's sister thinks she owns 2 homes in this economy, tears of joy skull." The video was a skit. Him wearing a fake wig, pretending to cry over having too many properties, holding 2 cardboard signs. "I worked hard, but Mom said it's hers now." He even fake sobbed into a wine glass. The comments? LMAOOO, Brent is savage. Why is she hoarding houses? Sounds like the family did the right thing. I went completely still. Not crying. Not fuming. Just cold. Frozen. Like my body was pausing to give my mind a head start. I opened my laptop. Pulled up the cloud folder where I'd saved all my house docs. Mortgage statements. Closing documents. Tax returns. Utility bills. Every receipt with my name on it. Then I opened the cabin's deed. Still mine. No dispute. No transfer. Legally, financially, and ethically, it was my property. And they were turning me into a punchline. I texted Mandy. Keep everything. Screenshots, stories, even the DMs. She responded with a thumbs up, and another shot from Ellie's private chat, a message from my mom that read, Rachel needs to understand it's not just about ownership. It's about family. Family. The same family who didn't show up for my college graduation, who painted over my childhood room and turned it into Brent's meditation cave. The same family who changed the locks on my Asheville house and toasted it away like it was some raffle prize. That night, I didn't sleep. I just planned. I texted Greg, a college friend who now handled property law out of Charlotte, asked if he could help me draft a cease and desist. He didn't ask questions. Of course, he said. You want teeth or politeness? Teeth. I texted back, but silent ones. He sent a draft the next morning. While the letter was processing, I got to work, changed the smart lock codes at the cabin, installed exterior cameras, pulled the access logs from the smart home app. They'd been there for 6 nights, uninvited. I archived every Instagram post, every comment, every mocking little caption. Brent had made 3 separate TikToks, joking about mooching off the bitter sister. They thought it was funny. They thought I was a doormat with Wi-Fi. But they forgot I work in systems. Civil engineering doesn't teach you how to cry in board meetings. It teaches you how to build things to last, and how to dismantle them quietly when they fail. I bought new batteries for the security cams, created a fresh email account just for documentation, uploaded every legal file, labeled each folder with the property address and date. I didn't post anything, didn't warn them, didn't send a dramatic group text. I just filed, locked, and documented. The next morning, Mandy sent another message. They think you're ghosting them. Ellie's trying to frame it like you had a breakdown. Want me to keep sending? I replied with one word, archive. That weekend, while they were still lounging on my porch and drinking wine they didn't pay for, I sent the cease and desist letter through Greg. Formal, clear, non-negotiable, no drama, just law. I watched the cabin's live cam from my phone. No audio, just video. They didn't know it was there yet. They laughed, barbecued. Mom did yoga on the deck. Dad read a book on my hammock. Then Brent stepped into view with a box of new mugs. They were monogrammed. B&E's cabin. I nearly dropped my phone. They were branding it. Ellie posted a story later that day. Her feet up on the porch rail. Captioned, Home Sweet Home 2 Hearts #Lake Vibes. But what they didn't know. The locks were already changed. The notice was already filed. And the next time they tried to stroll in, the door wouldn't open. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. They could laugh at me on TikTok. They could lie to their followers and slap hashtags on my property. But they weren't taking anything else. Not without a fight they didn't see coming. I stopped answering their calls, stopped opening the group chat, stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding that could be cleared up over brunch. This wasn't miscommunication. This was coordinated erasure. And I'd finally stopped translating it as love. I spent the next 3 days in a friend's guest room, surrounded by documents, legal pads, USB sticks, a shoebox full of old receipts, and one folder marked, Lake Cabin Deed plus Proof. It was time to stop trusting memories. Time to rely on paper. I pulled every record, every property tax statement, every water bill, screenshots of every payment notification, the notarized deed from when I'd bought the cabin at auction, even the invoice for the new HVAC unit I'd installed last spring. Greg, my lawyer friend, reviewed them with a quiet nod. You have more documentation than most people going through full divorces, he said, flipping through the pile. I smirked. Feels like one. He nodded. Good, that'll help. Next, I set up the surveillance system. It wasn't about spying. It was about proof. I installed cameras on the porch, in the driveway, and one discreetly above the front door. They didn't know about the email alerts, or that the smart lock system logged every attempted code entry. I changed all the access credentials. New passwords, new backup email, new permissions, and then, just for peace of mind, I linked it all to a backup drive. One attempt to break in, and I'd have time-stamped footage ready to go. Mandy kept sending me screenshots from Ellie's DMs. Brent had started selling merch. T-shirts that said 2 homes and a bad attitude. Tears of joy #Rachel's rules. I archived it. I didn't even flinch anymore. I let them dig their own digital grave, one hashtag at a time. The next step? Airbnb. I made the cabin live. Photos, description, calendar, everything ready. I scheduled the first booking for 3 weeks out. That gave me time to do a deep clean, replace the locks one more time, and prepare for what I already knew was coming. They were going to show up again. The last time they tried to claim something of mine, I walked away. This time I'd make sure there was nowhere for them to land. One afternoon, I drove up to the cabin. They weren't there. I walked through the house with a trash bag and a mission. Everything they'd added? Gone. B&E's cabin mugs? In the trash. The beachy wall art? Removed. The yoga mat? Donated. Then I found the box in the hall closet. It was labeled, Rachel's old stuff. Inside, my high school yearbooks, a few childhood books, a sweater I hadn't worn in 10 years. They'd packed me up like a leftover tenant. I didn't even open it. I took it straight to a women's shelter down the highway. I walked in, handed it over, and said, "This was mine. It deserves to be somewhere useful." I drove back feeling 10 pounds lighter. That night, I watched the Airbnb listing go live. Within 24 hours, it was booked solid for the next 6 weekends. Turns out, the demand for lakeside escapes was high, and my little fixer-upper had curb appeal when you weren't trying to prove your worth to people who'd never valued you. Greg sent the final letter to my parents that same evening. Formal, legal, non-negotiable. Any further attempts to enter the cabin or misrepresent ownership of either property will result in legal action. Any future social posts implying shared ownership may be grounds for defamation or false representation. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Mandy for the records. No fanfare, no confrontation. Just a boundary, etched in legalese. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. Deep, dreamless, undisturbed. Because when you stop begging people to see you, you start seeing yourself more clearly. The next phase wasn't revenge. It was restoration. They'd taken what they thought they could get away with. Now they'd see what happens when the invisible daughter stops disappearing. 3 weeks later, they came back. I saw it happen in real time. On my phone. The porch cam lit up with motion alerts just as I finished my morning coffee. 2 suitcases. 1 plastic storage bin labeled Rachel's old stuff. And my parents. Mom was wearing her wellness retreat hoodie, the one she always broke out when she wanted to seem spiritual and harmless. Dad had on his fishing hat, the one from every family photo where I stood off to the side, cropped out like an afterthought. They walked up the steps like they owned the place. Mom tried the doorknob. It didn't budge. She entered a code. Waited. Nothing. Tried again. The red light blinked. Dad stepped up, squinting at the keypad like maybe it was broken. Mom pulled out her phone. Dialed. My screen lit up with, "Mom, mobile." I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, then another. Then came the note. I got the alert. Motion detected. My cam showed her taping a handwritten letter to the front door with pink washi tape that said, "Love." I waited until they left, then drove up and peeled it off. "We raised you better than this. This is your family. Don't forget where you come from." That line hit harder than I expected. Don't forget where I come from? They'd spent years pretending I was some extension of their to-do list. Now when I drew the line, I was the problem. The next wave came fast. Ellie posted on Instagram that night. Black and white selfie. No makeup. Eyes watery. Captioned, "It's hard when family shuts you out, especially when they kick your aging parents into the street. But we still believe in forgiveness." Heartbreak folded hands. It got hundreds of likes. Her comments were full of sympathy. "So sorry, babe. Your sister sounds toxic. You're so strong." I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I just added another screenshot to the folder labeled Misrepresentation Evidence. Then Brent joined in. A new TikTok. Him and Ellie sitting on lawn chairs in front of the locked cabin. Title: When the Airbnb owner turns out to be your sister's skull. Ellie fake cried into her hands while Brent narrated, "She really let our parents go homeless, y'all." I checked the Airbnb messages. Guests had already checked in for the upcoming weekend. Couple from Atlanta. Booked for a romantic getaway. I messaged them a friendly heads up. Please don't be alarmed by any individuals lingering on the porch. Legally, they are trespassers. Greg, my lawyer friend, sent a follow-up. Want me to escalate? I typed back. Not yet. Let them perform. Let them try to paint me as the villain. Let them cry into filters and hashtags. I had receipts. I had footage. I had ownership. The difference was, they needed an audience. I didn't. The next morning, I drove up with my AirPods in and a broom in the trunk, swept the porch, replaced the note with one of my own. Typed. Laminated. Clear. This is private property. Trespassing has been reported to local authorities. All access is monitored by security cameras. Smile. Then I donated the Rachel's old stuff bin. Didn't even look inside. Some things aren't meant to be reclaimed. Some things are better left at the door you were never invited through. That afternoon, I got a text from Mandy. They're spiraling. Ellie told the brunch group you were mentally unstable but then couldn't back it up when someone asked for proof. I smiled at my screen, because the more noise they made, the more obvious it became. This wasn't about love. It never was. This was about entitlement. I'd been the quiet, reliable one for too long. The background character. The extra who keeps the scene moving without taking up space. But now I had the title deed. The lock codes. The bookings. The proof. They didn't just lose access. They lost the narrative. And that, more than the property, was what they couldn't stand. I didn't tell anyone when I filed the trespassing notice. Didn't announce it in a group chat. Didn't tag Ellie in a story. Didn't post a single photo. I just walked into the county clerk's office, signed my name on the form, and slid over the documents. The deed, the security footage, the cease and desist. The woman behind the desk raised her eyebrows when she saw the names. You want them served? She asked. No need, I said. They'll figure it out. The sheriff's department filed the warning. Official. Quiet. Perfect. That same afternoon, I confirmed the next Airbnb guests. A couple from Charlotte coming up for a quote decompression weekend. I left them a welcome basket. Local honey, coffee from my favorite roaster, a handwritten note that said, enjoy your peace. This home is full of it. No drama, no spectacle. Just a full calendar and boundaries that didn't budge. I'd stopped answering Ellie's vague guilt texts. I'd stopped responding to Mom's calls, where she tried to sound hurt and maternal in the same breath. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted reversal. They wanted me to walk it back. Say I overreacted. Say I was being too serious. But I'd finally stopped flinching when they called me sensitive. I was focused on the facts. The cabin was legally mine. The house in Asheville had also been mine, until they handed it to Brent, like a consolation prize for marrying my sister. They told me family was everything. But they'd only valued me when I was giving something away. So I gave them silence. I gave them the discomfort of not being able to spin the story. And I gave the community something better. A well-maintained, peaceful lakeside escape with a 5-star host. Within 10 days, every weekend for the next 2 months was booked. I watched the calendar fill up like a wall of armor. Every reservation was a line they couldn't cross. Every guest was another reminder. This home had value, with or without their approval. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I packed up my things from my friend's place and moved back into my Asheville house, the one they claimed wasn't mine anymore. Because the truth? My name was still on that deed too. They'd never filed a legal transfer. They never even asked me to. They just changed the locks, painted the walls, and called it a gift. But I'd already filed a challenge to the title. It was pending review. And while I waited, I stayed there. In my own bedroom. Slept in my own bed. Cooked in my kitchen. They weren't living there anymore, not since they moved toward downsizing. I didn't decorate. Not yet. I just existed. Unapologetically. One afternoon, while sipping tea on the porch, my phone buzzed. Greg. They've hired someone. Lawyer in town. Looks like they're trying to fight the title challenge. On what grounds? I texted back. Emotional contribution? I stared at the message and laughed out loud. Emotional contribution. Like the time Mom let me sleep on the couch after my wisdom teeth removal instead of making me go back to my apartment. Like the times Dad reminded me not to gloat when I got promotions. Like the years they called Ellie the heart of the family, while I quietly paid property taxes no one else even acknowledged. Their emotional contributions were things I was expected to be grateful for, but my financial ones? They were up for redistribution. Greg said not to worry. The challenge was solid, the evidence tight, but still, I locked the house up every night, double-checked the cameras, and I waited. Not for them to show up, for the shift. The one I could feel coming. The one where they'd realize they couldn't guilt me into surrender anymore, that my silence wasn't submission. It was structure. It was the new foundation I was building. Without them, I invited them to brunch. Not a dramatic showdown. No yelling. Just a table for 5, at a diner halfway between my house and the lake. Neutral ground. I didn't tell them why. Just said, it's time. They came, of course. They always do when they think the story might end in their favor. Mom showed up in pearls, like she was walking into church. Dad wore his good vest, the one he only pulls out for funerals and graduations. Ellie looked like she'd rehearsed an apology, but decided at the last minute to swap it for the victim face. Brent didn't even try. Aviators indoors, protein shake in hand. I came alone, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. I plopped a manila folder on the table before anyone even got their napkins unfolded. Before we start, I said, I want you to know this isn't about forgiveness. It's about facts. Mom raised an eyebrow. Rachel, I held up a hand, not angrily, just enough to say, no more of that. Inside the folder, the original deed to the Asheville house in my name, the utility bills I paid for 7 years, the updated cabin deed, a copy of the Airbnb agreement, security cam stills of them entering the cabin without permission, screenshots of Ellie's posts, Brent's, TikToks, group chat DMs forwarded by Mandy, Greg's cease and desist letter, and finally, the county clerk's filing on my title challenge to the Asheville house. I pushed it across the table. This, I said, is everything you've tried to erase. Neatly labeled, legally recognized. Brent leaned forward, smirking. This some kind of threat? I smiled without warmth. No. It's a reminder. Ellie crossed her arms. Why are you doing this? You want to embarrass us? I didn't hand out microphones at a wedding reception and call it a gift, I said. Mom flinched. I turned to her. You changed the locks on a home you didn't own. You moved into my cabin like it was your inheritance. And you weaponized the word family so many times I stopped recognizing it. Dad opened his mouth, closed it. I didn't confront you, I continued. I filed, I archived, I documented. You wanted a scene. You got silence. Until now. Ellie sniffed, dramatic. I just wanted us to be close again. You mocked me on your private stories, told people I was unstable, that I was hoarding houses. Brent sold merch, Ellie? She didn't deny it. Mom finally spoke. Rachel, you really want to ruin this family over a few misunderstandings? I looked at her. Calm, clear. You did that yourselves. She stared at me, stunned. Like I was someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I was. I'd stopped shrinking. Brent muttered something under his breath. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I just pulled the folder back toward me and tapped the last page. This isn't a negotiation. You try me again, I will press charges. Civil and criminal. Dad cleared his throat. And what are we supposed to do? I tilted my head. You figure it out. You're the adults, right? I stood up. Dropped a $20 on the table for the coffee I barely touched. Ellie's voice broke behind me. You're not even gonna let us explain? I've already heard everything, I said. I just stopped believing it. I walked out. The bell above the door jingled like punctuation. They didn't follow. Not this time. Back in my car, I sat for a moment. Let the engine idle. Not because I was second-guessing. Because I was finally at peace. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said what needed to be said. Then left. That was power they'd never understand. And I wasn't giving it back. They didn't finish their omelets. Didn't even ask for to-go boxes. They just stood there, like people waiting on an elevator that never came. By the next morning, I changed my number. Not out of spite, out of peace. They'd had direct access to me for 31 years. used it to manipulate, guilt, reframe. Now, they'd have to work through Greg if they wanted anything. And Greg billed by the hour. A week later, I got word through Mandy. Brent and Ellie had moved into a rental across town, a 2-bedroom with no central AC. Brent posted a TikTok pretending to love the minimalist lifestyle. It got 30 views. Mom and Dad? They listed their house. Turns out they'd taken out a second mortgage to help fund Ellie's wedding. The ballroom. The horse-drawn carriage. The custom neon sign that read, "The Carters, forever fit and fabulous." They were banking on moving into one of my properties, but the locks didn't turn for them anymore. And the court wasn't on their side. The house sold below asking. Fast. The market had cooled. They moved into a condo near the edge of town. Mandy sent a photo of a for sale post featuring Mom's antique vanity, my grandmother's. The caption said, "Price to move, sentimental value, but life changes." Ellie posted fewer stories after that. Brent's TikToks got quieter. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't block them. I didn't subtweet. I just moved on.